So you and we have been captivated by the horrific scenes of fire in Australia, and you've been asking us lots of questions about them. Well, this is the worst bushfire season that Australia has ever experienced. These fires are more devastating, more catastrophic than anything we've seen in Australia before. Some of the numbers as they stand now, it looks as though something in the region of 10.7 million hectares of land in Australia has been affected, has been burnt by these fires. To put that into context, that's about a third of the whole of the United Kingdom. The smoke from these fires is covering an area almost the size of the whole of mainland Europe. It's absolutely huge, and the effects, of course, are horrific. People have lost their lives in these fires. Thousands of people's homes have been lost. Tens of thousands of people are having their day-to-day lives and their livelihoods affected by the impacts of these fires. And really shockingly, something like, it's estimated that 1.25 billion animals, mammals, reptiles, birds, have lost their lives in these fires, either directly or indirectly. Directly because they've been caught in the fire and have been burnt to death, or indirectly because those left behind, they no longer have water and shelter, protection from predators, and so they're unable to survive either. Of course, there are iconic Australian species affected by these fires: kangaroos, wallabies, kookaburras, and of course koalas, who have been featuring a lot in the news. The koalas are already, as a species, rated as being vulnerable to extinction by the IUCN, and actually most of the koalas in the east coast area of Australia, they live in an area known as the Koala Triangle, and it's already estimated that they could be extinct in this region within 30 years, and obviously these devastating fires are just making the threat of that extinction crisis worse and worse. So one of the obvious questions is, but aren't bushfires normal? And also, what role does climate change play in all of this? Well, I mean, the answer is yes, bushfires are normal, and Australia does, like lots of countries, experience bushfires every year. But the difference is that these are more intense, more extreme than they have ever been before, and that is where climate change comes in. That's where the climate crisis plays its role, because climate change is what's known as a threat multiplier. So where something bad is happening, the effect of climate change is to make it worse and worse. So wildfires, as with extreme weather like storms, hurricanes, heat waves, climate change makes it more intense and more frequent, and therefore it has a much worse impact when it happens. Australia has warmed by about 1 degree centigrade over the last century. That's in line with the global average, but of course we know Australia is already a hot country, so warming by 1 degree centigrade is a big deal. And in fact, Australia in 2019 had its hottest and driest year on record. It was reckoned to be about 1.5 degrees centigrade over the average of the period between about 1960 and 1990, a big leap in temperature. And the effect of that is to provide drier ground, warmer air, and drier foliage and trees, which of course provide fuel for fire. So all of this is a perfect set of conditions that enable these fires to start burning and then to burn really intensely. And what's more, the emissions that come from that fire are adding to the problem itself as well. It's estimated that in the few months of the fire, that Australia has emitted about 2/3 of the normal emissions that it would emit during a year anyway, and that's on top, of course, of the normal emissions that it's going to carry on emitting during the course of the year. So this is made worse by the climate crisis, and it is helping to fuel the climate crisis. And let's be clear, we as humans are causing this. It's the emissions that we are causing through burning fossil fuels, oil, coal and gas, in order to power our lives, to heat our homes, to fuel our cars, to fuel our planes. We are emitting all of these greenhouse gases which are going into the atmosphere, and they're causing the planet to heat up. And it's that is causing the climate crisis, and it is that is causing the conditions for these much more intense extreme weather conditions and extreme fire conditions. And what about nature in all of this? I mean, we are making this worse by what we're doing to nature as well. Nature is part of the solution to the climate crisis, and actually we are cutting a swathe through it. So in order to fuel our food system, for example, we are cutting down forests at a phenomenal rate, at a rate of 1 football pitch every minute, to make space for our livestock and to make space to grow food for our livestock. And when we cut those trees down, we lose a means of storing some of the carbons that we emit in the trees and in the soil that they grow in. So we not only lose that and then lose, and then put it into the atmosphere when it burns in these, as it has done in the Amazon, and it is doing at the moment in Australia, but we also no longer have those systems to capture that carbon for us. So part of this needs to be about restoring nature as well. And what we need to be clear about is that this is no longer a sign of things to come in the future. This is happening now. We're seeing this happening now in Australia. But most importantly, the most important thing we can take away from this is that we still have time to do something about this. We know what we need to do, we know that we need to act, and we know how we need to act. We have most of the tools that we need, most of the solutions that we need to tackle this problem. Renewable energy to power our homes and to heat and cool our homes. We need fewer cars on the road, and we need to power those cars through clean electricity. We need to fly less, we need to eat less meat, rely less on the meat that is causing that deforestation. We know all of this, and this is why the world's leaders committed just 5 years ago in 2015 in Paris to acting, to keeping temperatures to 1.5 degrees, to helping us and all of nature and wildlife survive on this planet. And we're just not acting fast enough to make sure that we live up to those promises that were made. So you've been asking, how can you help? Well, firstly, lots of you are already, and lots of you have been contributing money, and thank you immensely for that. Where does that money go? WWF Australia is working to try and tackle the immediate crisis. They're working with lots of organisations on the ground locally to respond to the immediate crisis, to try and help wildlife in crisis, then to try and work to restore the habitats that those wildlife urgently need to survive immediately after the fires, and then they will be working as well all the way through to continue to raise their voice and demand action of governments, both to deal with the immediate problem of the fires and to tackle the emissions that cause the climate crisis, that help make this problem much, much worse. So thank you very much for donating to them. Please continue donating to WWF Australia, and rest assured that they will keep reviewing where that money is best needed and making sure that your money gets to where it is needed, when it is needed. But don't forget the other things, the other ways that you can help with this wider problem, with the wider climate crisis. Firstly, by raising your voice. Never let politicians and businesses not know that you care about this. Never let them forget how important this is to you, and let them know that you demand that they take action. In terms of politicians, that's the big picture around the action that we need to take here in the UK to cut emissions from our electricity system, from our transport system, from our food system, but also remind them that they need to step up and be leaders at the end of this year at that crucial climate meeting in Glasgow in November. There are lots of ways that we can help cut emissions in our own day-to-day lives as well, of course. We can fly less, we can drive less, we can eat less meat, we can switch our energy provider to a renewable provider instead of fossil fuels. There are lots of things that we can do in our day-to-day lives. We can influence our friends and families to encourage them to do it as well. All of this contributes, all of this is part of that overall emissions picture that's fueling the climate crisis. So please don't forget to take those actions. If you want to find out more about the emergency and about the actions to tackle it, then continue to look on our website. If you want to get lots of information about what's happened so far and what the political reaction has been and what the climate experts are saying, there's an excellent website called Carbon Brief that has done a really detailed analysis of this. But again, our colleagues in WWF Australia are closest to this, and their website has lots of information, and the links are at the bottom of this page. So go there to find out more information. Also go there if you want to contribute to help WWF Australia in taking that action to tackle the problem and to protect wildlife when these fires abate. And thank you very much for caring about this. Thank you for raising your voice, and thank you for contributing to help us to tackle this.